Hi everyone, this is Sarah O'Keefe. Welcome to our webcast on Risky Business, the Challenge of Content Silos. You've probably heard a lot in the last year or so about why silos are a problem. What I want to do today is talk a little bit more personally about why silos are a problem based on some user experiences that I've had in my own life as a consumer or as an end user. A couple of quick housekeeping things. We are recording this session and we will send out the recording to you. We would encourage you to ask your questions in the questions area, which depending on which GoToWebinar interface you're looking at could be a little bit different. In my version, there's a sort of a drop down, but there's also a little thing you can click to pop out the questions area. So find that, because if you do have questions, we will be looking for them there. Also, I should tell you that attendees do not appear in the recording, and if you use your question, we typically will not identify you, although we can see your name. We can, but the recording can't. Okay, so with that all taken care of, let's move on here. I wanted to do a quick introduction for those of you that don't know who I am. My name's Sarah O'Keefe. I'm the principal here at Scriptorium Publishing, which is based in North Carolina. I hope for your sake that it is not as hot where you are today as it is here, because it is hot and not nice. Some things I like are chocolate and knitting, predictable output, smooth localization, metrics, automation, and concise writing. Some things I really do not like at all are workarounds, recurring tasks, busy work, bad content, eggplant, and checked baggage. So with that, I wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about what your customer experience might look like before the sale versus after the sale. About a year ago, I found myself in the market for a roof rack for my kayaks. And I went through this lovely configurator that Yakima had on their website, and you check things off, you tell them what you want to carry. I've actually checked off bikes here rather than kayaks, but you get the idea. And you go through this thing, and it is absolutely lovely. And then you it says, oh, okay, well, tell us what's on your roof and what do you need to do and all the rest of it. And then it says, okay, here are the things you're going to need. And I felt loved. Felt really good about buying this actually rather expensive roof rack. Went through, bought it, and everything was great. And then after the sale, this is what I got in the box. So after all this lovely, lovely stuff that they sent me, they suddenly turned around and sent me this, really not very attractive instructions for how to install these things. And it actually kind of got worse, because this was the front of the page, and then you kind of get into the installation instructions, and it's just, fairly horrible. Now, if you look down in step 7, it talks about your 4 MS, which are, it turns out later, those are measurements that you need, but for some reason it was 4 M's, and for some reason it was all caps, on the Q-clip sheet. So what is a Q-clip sheet? I have no idea. If the clip sheet is not in the box, contact your dealer. Oh dear. So I go looking through all the paperwork that came in the box with the various roof rack components, and eventually I found this. This is in fact, the Q-clip sheet. And what you have to do here is you have to find your car and your model year and then pick off all these measurements. And at this point, I had long forgotten the very nice configurator that they gave me on their website, and I was, rapidly approaching really not very pleased with life, and I was not feeling the love anymore. Eventually, we did figure out how to install this thing. It took a long time and a lot of bad words, but we did get it up and running. Now, later, actually in the process of putting together this presentation, I went looking for this information because I think in a fit of anger I had thrown it away, so I went looking for it online. And when I went looking for Q-clip configuration information online, I found this. This is their fitlookup.yakima.com, and it turns out that if you go to fitlookup.yakima.com, they will give you this lovely picture of your car, so you can search on your car, and you can go through this whole thing, and it'll tell you exactly what your measurements are. Now, it's still challenging to install the rack because you have to get all the measurements right, but they did give them to me and show me where they belong, and they really did kind of a nice job on this. But my out-of-the-box experience did not include this customized piece of information that told me exactly what I needed to know. This is available only on their website, and frankly, I'm not entirely sure how as a customer I was supposed to know about it, because there wasn't any information about that when I got the box. It just said, look at your sheet and then figure it out yourself. So overall, they were focused on the customer experience for pre-sale, but they didn't focus on post-sale, and so I went from really happy to annoyed and sweaty as I was installing all this stuff and having great difficulty with it, because I had to sort of, figure out what I was doing here. Now, this is a case where they can do personalized information, and they chose to do it well on the website, and they chose not to do it at all in the box. And this is a pretty good example of a customer service failure. Another one that I like to look at, we all like to pick on Comcast because they're just fun to pick on. But, it is now dangerous to ignore your customer experience, because you end up with people writing open letters to Comcast. And with social media, they have a voice, those customers, and they can drown out the corporate voice that is perhaps what the company, the organization, would prefer to have out there. Now, in this particular letter, or in this particular blog post, the author wrote, nobody in the customer has a problem department can do everything like they can in the customer wants to buy something department. So in other words, when you're buying, they can do anything and they will accommodate you and they will tell you everything. And then once you get to tech support, it's all stonewalling. And I think that pretty much sums it up, not just for Comcast, but for probably more companies than we would really like, that this is what the experience looks like. And customers notice this. I mean, customers are not oblivious, and customers notice when their treatment before the sale is really significantly different from their treatment after the sale. Some other things that can go wrong. I tried to log into Wells Fargo one day, and it said, to experience a better CEO portal, upgrade to Internet Explorer 10, which, in and of itself is fairly questionable. But this looked an awful lot like this is broken and it will not work unless you use IE 10, which is problematic for a variety of reasons, not least of which is that I'm running on a Mac. So I thought, all right, well, I guess. And then I clicked on that little view browser requirements thing. And I went looking at this, and there's my browser listed as, not a problem. We support that. So they know what browser I'm running, right? I'm on a website. They know. They chose not to find out. They chose to give me a thing that looked like an error message and forced me to go over here and check on this, because they were too, let us say, unmotivated to actually check on what browser I was using and say, oh, no, that one's okay, so we can move on. They just put a global error message up there for no particular reason. Now, Internet service providers are, of course, our favorite way to deal with this. One day, this is our former Internet service provider. One day, the Internet went down at our office. And so, of course, the first thing you do when the Internet goes down is you reboot the router. And what's the second thing you do? Well, you go to check and see if there's a network outage on your service. So, and I'll also point out that I was here on the desktop site, but the mobile site actually has the same problem I'm going to describe here. So, my business internet isn't working, and I need to know, is it a system outage? My local router is working. That seems to be okay. So what seems to be the problem? And I want to know, is the network down? Is Windstream's network down? So I come over here to Windstream. I click on business, and it takes me over to here, and I say, well, okay, how about support? That seems like a good place for network status. And I click on support, and I do not get network status. There's a map, and I thought, ooh, a map. View network map. I bet that's it. But guess what? That's not network status. That's where can you buy our service. Now, why it is that where can you buy our service is on their support page is pretty unclear to me. And at this point, I thought, well, maybe they don't publish their network outages or their network status. Maybe that's just something that you can't get to. Well, so I looked for it via Google. And result number one for Windstream network status was the Windstream outage report, which does in fact sit on the Windstream site. Go there, and it informs me, nope, everything is fine. Okay, so now I need to probably make some other phone calls. But then I got to thinking about this. Why was that so difficult? And the conclusion I came to was that their website is broken. If you take a look at Windstream's front site, their front page, they have something like 2/3 of it, maybe more, is sales. Would you like to buy something? Would you like to buy business or residential? Okay. That bottom left box is more sales. The bottom right box is the boring corporate stuff, like you'd like to get a job and investor relations. And in the middle there it says in teeny tiny type, residential support and business support. So that's the only place that you can go for support. So this entire front page is targeted at potential customers and apparently investors and maybe potential employees. Okay, so we go to the support page, and the support page, and this I think is indefensible. I can make a case for the front page being mostly about sales, but this is the support page. So what does Windstream care about? Well, they care about sales. That one on the right-hand side, that entire thing on the right is sales. They care about getting paid. And if you look at all of that, you know, that's customer support is all about getting paid. And that stuff at the bottom of Windstream W9, you know, again, they want to get paid. The stuff in the middle is contact information, and a lot of that is support, but I would actually have to pick up the phone and call them. Now, as a side note, I'll tell you that we were actually we bought our internet originally through somebody called Nuvox. Nuvox got purchased by Windstream, and if you look in the bottom middle of this page, you'll see that voice circuit equipment support, there's a phone number, there's another phone number for former Nuvox, there's one for Cavalier, and there's one for Paytech. Well, we had been away from Nuvox for so long that we had actually forgotten that that was who was bought by Windstream. So I was constantly calling the main number and being told, oh, you're Nuvox, we have to send you over there, which was yet another problem. But the actual support, the only actual real support that is on this page is that thing that I've highlighted with an arrow, which is where you can go to their Network Operations Center and find out what's going on and potentially open a ticket. And then we've got some phone numbers and some chat kind of in the middle. But there's all sorts of stuff going on here that is not what I need, and you'll notice that nowhere is there a tell us the network status anywhere on this page, which you would think they would want to put up there to deflect all those calls so that people don't call and say what's going on with the network. So there we are. This is probably a pretty good example of a case where the various silos got parts of this website, and then they put together their parts, but it all doesn't come together, and nobody's thought about the poor customer who actually needs support. It's pretty clear from looking at this that sales owns, you know, possibly the entire website and just grudgingly gives support and some other people space on the site. It made me very cranky, and we are now a customer of a different ISP. Now, it wasn't all this, but this certainly did not help. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about something much more cheerful, a much better experience. I ordered a Road ID a while back. Now, Road ID makes these rubber bracelets that go on your wrist, and they're intended for cyclists. So if you're biking along, you have this little bracelet, and it has a little metal tab on it, and the metal tab has on it your name and emergency contact information and one or two other things. You can get about 4 lines of information on there. So I ordered one for, I don't know, less than $20. They're very inexpensive. And they sent me a note and said, hey, we're sending you this Road ID, and that was fine. And they told me what I needed to know, the shipping date, how it was being shipped, when it would show up. But then, look at what they did in the middle here. So you live in North Carolina. We're super excited to have you as a customer. You know, this and that. Your state was first in flight, and we love you for Krispy Kreme. Donuts. So they took the time to put together a transactional document that then had something personalized in it that made me happy because I wasn't expecting it, right? The bit about fantastic news, no, you didn't win the lottery, they have this wonderful tone to what they're sending me. Now, this is awesome, and I really enjoyed it, but you have to be really, really careful with this because when transactional information goes wrong, when you personalize badly, then it's not awesome. Then what you end up is something like this. And you know that it's not good when people are making fun of your personalization or the thing that is trying to help you. And it's really, really bad when your particular thing, your personalized voice, becomes an internet meme. That is not a good thing. Now, I also wanted to point out that customer experience is not just a visual thing. This is a screenshot here from TripIt.com, or from the TripIt, actually, mobile site. And I don't know if I'll be able to pick this up, but when you go into the TripIt site, when it sends you a notification on your phone and you have new information, you get a little bong. And it sounds exactly, and I mean exactly like the one that you hear on an airplane. And it's just this wonderful little touch that says, oh, you're getting a notification that's related to travel. So they did this tiny little thing. They could have used the regular noises on the phone, the regular alerts or things, but instead they changed it. So this was sort of as a side note of when you think about customer experience, what kinds of things can you do to integrate that whole experience? Now, why do we have silos and why do we have all these problems with this content that's all over the place that is not where it needs to be? And the answer is basically in the org chart. When you look at an org chart, the website comes from one place, the support information comes from a different place, the technical documentation comes from a third place, and somebody looked at this not too long ago and said, oh, well, you've oversimplified. There are more like 6 or 7 or a dozen of these C-level execs that own different parts of the content. So, this is the way it is, and as a result, you get siloed content that conflicts, that doesn't have a consistent voice, that has all these kinds of problems. But silos are a problem for the customer experience because as a customer, I don't care. I don't care about your org chart. I don't care about marketing, tech, comm, sales, and support. I want answers, and I want a consistent experience. I don't want to go from, wow, that was a really great configurator, to I cannot believe I have to look up these numbers in this 8-point type on this horrible chart where I can't find anything. I want those answers, and I want them in a way that makes me happy. So how do we get there? And then I think what we need to do is start talking about the maturity of our content and a hierarchy of content needs or requirements. Now, there are several people that have done this. This is an example from Jonathan Colman, who works at Facebook. He talks about content needing to be first accessible. You have to be able to get to it. So accessibility, acceptability, usability, and finally joy. If you do it really well, you get joy. And that road ID example is a good example of that. But if they had not given me all the other prereqs, if they hadn't given me the tracking number I needed, the estimated ship date, and all these other things, the fact that they made jokes about donuts would have been actually really annoying. So you have to do all that other stuff first. Hilary Marsh has a different version. She starts with accurate and then necessary, authentic, effective, and strategic. We have a third version of the hierarchy of content needs, and we looked at this in terms of, well, what do customers care about? And I think the answer is that you have to start at the bottom here. The content has to be available. If I can't find the network outage report, I don't care how pretty it is. I need it to be there. I also need it, when I find it, to be accurate. I need appropriate content. So it would be helpful if you have a network outage if you would show me outages only in North Carolina or outages only that affect North Carolina, because if you have an outage in California or in Europe, it's likely that that doesn't matter to me. So available, accurate, appropriate. Connected content is useful. This is content that you can engage with as a customer where they know which bike rack you bought, and so therefore they give you information that's relevant to that bike rack. And I can hear you muttering under your breath, this is hard and we can't do it and we don't know who our customers are, but I will point out that the invoicing department in every single organization I have ever met has the ability to personalize that information and get the correct invoices out. So it's not a matter of it can't be done, it's a matter of having the will to do it and the interest. And then finally, at the top of the pyramid, we have intelligent content. This is the information that you can adapt, remix, rearrange. In many cases, this would allow me, for example, to get a product configuration document that has exactly the information I need with exactly the measurements I need, not a little placeholder that says, go find the right number here. It would just say the number is 47.2. Now, what would be really awesome would be a self-installing bike rack, but I don't think we're quite there yet. Now, I've talked about this before, but I think it's important to note that you need those first three levels. Those bottom three levels are what constitute minimum viable content. If you don't meet those three, you are done. Your content has to be available. Windstream failed because I couldn't find it. It has to be accurate, right? I mean, information that is just incorrect is of no use to anybody. And it has to be appropriate. Clippy fails because it annoys people. Comcast fails all the time. Road ID made an interesting connection with me. You know, they did a good job of providing information that made that personal connection. And intelligent content would be what Yakima could have done, which is shipped me a customized installation sheet, not this direct that I had to reconfigure myself. They've already solved it on the website, and that was very nice and very nifty, but they didn't solve it for paper. So the critical thing here is, from the point of view of a content creator, customers don't care about our silos. They are just not interested, except when they cause problems for the customers, and then they become very interested and very annoyed. I'm not the only person that thinks so. Here's Ray Gallen talking about customers don't care about your org chart. Customers don't care about your org chart, and also customers still don't care about your org chart. So I think we have at least almost universal consensus on that. So the question then becomes, what do we need to do? You know, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this issue of silos, and how do we make this happen? I've got three lovely little bullets here. They're just so easy, so how hard could it be? But let's start from the back. If we start with the bullet at the bottom. Presentational barriers. What I'm talking about here is a case where the content that you present is so obviously different that it looks as though it came from two different companies, because it came from two different silos. They have a different look and feel. They don't coordinate. It doesn't look at all the same. That's actually by far the easiest one of the silo problems to solve, because if the support group can talk to the marketing group, can talk to the training group, can talk to the TechCom group, they should be able to come to agreement on, we're going to use this logo, and we're going to use this font, and we're going to make things look kind of like this. They don't have to look identical. They just have to look related. And again, that Yakima example is a good example of that, where the stuff I saw on the website looked one way. The stuff I got in print, it could have come from Mars. It didn't look anything like what they sent me, I think, or what they showed me on the website. I think they had the same logo, but I think that was about it. So presentational barriers just involve the will to kind of break down that silo and say, let's coordinate. Let's make things look related. That's all you really have to do. The organizational barriers are a separate and much more difficult problem, because if you have a marketing group that reports to a CMO and a TechCom group that reports to the CTO, let's say, the Chief Technical Officer, and then you've got a support group that reports to maybe engineering or a support VP or something like that, actually trying to break that down and create unified content organizations, or a unified content organization, is really, really hard. At this point, we feel like actually trying to break those down, if the organization isn't ready, is probably not going to succeed. And what we usually recommend instead is the first bullet, which is to say, okay, maybe you report to different VPs, but can we find a way to share information, to develop information in such a way that you can share it across these organizations, even if you have multiple organizations? You know, make sure that you can talk to each other. Maybe coordinate. Maybe the training people are building something that the marketing group can use, or vice versa. How do you put those together and have some conversations about what people are doing? How are we going to pull this together? Because the bottom line is that if you are a content consumer, if you are a buyer of a product, or if you're researching a product, or if you're interested in that product, the silo thing, oh yeah, that was done by a different group, that is not okay. And you can't get away with it anymore, because people do have that voice and they do have the ability to complain about this stuff. So that's where we are. And these are the three simple but not easy things that need to be done to make this happen. So with that challenge to all of you who are on the phone, I think I'm ready to take some questions and see what kind of comments you might have along these lines. So, any questions out there from the audience? And also, have you found your questions tab? Has anybody tried to do this and break down the silos? While you're typing, I did want to comment a little bit on localization. These silos that we're talking about, every time you add a language, they basically get multiplied. You get this exponential problem that if you have a tech comm and a marketing silo, and then you add French, Italian, German, Spanish, and a whole bunch of other languages, now instead of 2 silos, you have 2 times however many different languages. And you just really run into some serious problems there when you start to go through and try to align these things, and you've got all these different groups doing all these different things, and the people down on the back end that are trying to do the localization have no chance. And then they get yelled at because the localization is inconsistent, and of course what they had coming in was inconsistent, and there they are. So they never stood a chance to begin with. So, all right, what have we got here? Well, and this is a good question. So a question just came in here. Who do you envision is responsible for trying to do this? Seems like it's a user experience team, while TechCom is more responsible for creating, maintaining source. We, meaning I think TechCom, just throw up our hands at the poor result. And that is a really good point that sort of goes to the central problem that we have here, which is that there is not somebody centrally responsible for this, right? TechCom does their thing, and tech support does their thing, and marketing does their thing. And as long as they all do their individual things separately, then there's no accountability for, hey, your TechCom stuff is incompatible with the marketing stuff. That needs to change. We need to have a scenario where somebody is responsible for the overarching content issues. And I think you might be right that that would be something like user experience. I don't really care what they're called as long as they clearly have accountability for this type of an issue. But it's a really good question, and I don't have a good answer. Another comment here, oh, interesting. So a comment from someone here says, my organization has been working to break down the barriers between product marketing, product management, and information development so that we provide the appropriate targeted content. It's not easy, but it's a start. And this has been driven by the information development team, which is a dot group that also performs usability testing. So for the original question, that might be an answer for you, that in the second commenter's comments, that it's being driven by the information development team who has been helping to align all these things. So I don't know where it needs to go, but it sounds as though that's one potential answer that you might have here. I'll also mention that I have a blog post coming probably on Monday that addresses this very question, so you might want to keep an eye out for that. All right, different question. Any tips for overcoming silos when the organization is encouraging cost reduction within each individual business unit? So, cost reduction and encouragement to reduce costs is I think, a universal constant of business. The trick to this is to show that the overcoming of silos is, there's 2 ways of looking at this. One is to say this will be more cost effective. So, for example, if TechCom and tech support share information, they will both be more cost effective because it'll take less time to develop the same amount of information instead of developing it twice. And that's a reasonable argument that says it's cost reduction, but it's cost reduction across the organization, not per business unit. Now, the problem that marketing and training are not in the same business unit is a whole other can of worms, but that's one answer. The second answer is that if the organization is very bottom line focused, then probably the answer to this is to find a way to argue that these investments are worth the time that they require. So, for example, we need a unified style guide across all of these different organizations. Well, why do we need that? To improve the customer experience. Okay, can we quantify the value of better customer experience? Can we quantify the value of always saying cyclist and never saying biker, because biker might mean, a motorcyclist or something like that. And that's a pretty trivial example of terminology, but things like that. What is the value of having that? Well, you'll have more consistent content, which is nice. We hope the customers are happier, which is nice. But probably the place where you can argue for that based on cost and cost savings is in translation localization. An investment in terminology and consistency will yield cost savings on the translation side and probably yield faster translation, better and faster translation. So I would look not just at cost reduction and cost avoidance, but also at time to market. Can you get to market faster, and what is that worth? So I don't really have any problem with an organization that says you have to cost justify everything, but it needs to be cost justified not just in terms of less money spent, but also in more value gained. And that's probably the place to go, which will help. All right, different question, looks like similar problem to the first one. This person says, we have support writers under support working mostly on knowledge bases and support site content, and engineering writers under engineering, and I assume those two are in a very different place, who work with engineering, developing user docs, which are published to the support site. We're documenting the same products in different tools. How do we move towards bridging these writing groups? So I think you've actually answered your own question, because if you're documenting the same thing, well, you don't have to go to the same tools necessarily, but clearly two different sets of tools is not a good thing. But what you need is tools, if they're either the same tools or tools that can talk to each other. You need the ability to exchange content among those groups. If the current tools will not allow you to exchange content, then the most likely outcome is that you're writing content twice or more than twice. And it should be relatively easy to quantify the cost of writing the same thing twice. If it takes a writer 2 or 3 hours to write a topic, you know what they're getting paid roughly, and oh wait, we wrote that topic again over in support. If we could stop doing that, we save 2 hours, 3 hours per not duplicated topic. So that's usually the angle we pursue there, is to say you're duplicating a bunch of stuff, you're writing redundant content. It costs a lot of money to write content twice, it costs a lot of money to review content twice, and it costs really a lot of money to translate content twice. So you pursue those avenues and say, we need to only do this once. And I think it's also important to say that you do not want to have 2 or 3 or 15 pieces of content that tell you how to do something in different ways. So if you're describing how to, insert a new slide in Keynote, which is a PowerPoint or something like that, there should be one way of doing that. There shouldn't be 5 different places where you've documented it in slightly different ways. It should be one way. Now, you could deliver that one way as step 1, click, I don't even know, file a new slide or something like that, or there's a keyboard shortcut, or here's a little video that shows you. But the content itself should be the same. So if you need to get alignment across those writing groups, then in part it's a tool issue, because and PowerPoint is infamous for this, it's very difficult to share PowerPoint information, right? You can't, it goes in, but it doesn't come out. So the tools are one part of that. If the tools won't talk to each other, we've got issues. But if we can get the tools to talk to each other, we also need the writers to talk to each other and to actually coordinate and say, you know what, I'll write that thing on database configuration, and you write that thing on the weird things that happen when you configure the database in a particular kind of thing, and then we'll put those together and we'll have one unified deliverable. So you have to get people talking to each other, and in a situation like that, my advice is typically to find something small, some small pilot project, and work through it there. Work through people getting to know each other, people learning about, okay, how can we make this work? Can we talk to each other? Oh, those guys in support are pretty smart. Oh, those people in training are pretty smart. And build some collaboration, respect, mutual interest, and get it up and running that way. Okay, great questions. If you guys think of anything else, feel free to email me. And I think with that, I will close this out. But if you think of anything else, do feel free to give us a call or an email. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.